Dream of the Red Chamber, Chapter 88.
When you break an arm, the diagnostic process is just, well, it's wonderfully binary.
Right, super straightforward.
Exactly. The X-ray shows that jagged white line on the screen. The doctor points to it and just says, broken.
Yeah.
And it is clean, it's visual, and frankly, it's comforting. You know exactly what went wrong and exactly how to cast it.
You have a protocol.
Right. But step outside of that sterile room and into the world of an ultra-wealthy dynasty in a state of terminal decline, and suddenly that X-ray machine just completely shattered.
Oh, absolutely. It's a total mess.
You are no longer looking for a clean break. You're looking at this deeply murky, infinitely complex diagnostic landscape.
Where the disease is hidden in, the ledgers.
Yes, the ledgers, the whispers of the staff, and the quiet panic attacks at 3 in the morning.
Which is exactly what we're getting into today.
So before we can even look at the ledgers or the courtyards, we have to establish the baseline of authority.
The CEO.
Right. And in this estate, that authority belongs entirely to Jia Mother. She is the unquestioned matriarch.
She held all the cards.
But what is incredibly striking about this specific chapter is that she isn't trying to secure her family's precarious future through shrewd financial investments.
Or even strategic political marriages, which you'd expect.
No, she's trying to do it through cosmic merit. She is operating entirely within a karma economy.
It is a brilliant strategy for someone who holds immense social power, but perhaps lacks, direct control over the external political forces threatening her family.
Because she can't just call up the emperor and fix things.
Exactly. The text specifies that Jia Mother is approaching a highly significant and honestly highly dangerous milestone. She's turning 81 years old.
Right.
And in the cultural and astrological context of this text, 81 is considered a hidden 9, or in Jiu.
Wait, I need you to explain the math on that. Why is 81 a hidden 9, and why does that imply spiritual danger?
Yeah, so it comes down to the deep numerological significance in traditional Chinese thought.
Okay.
9 is the ultimate yang number, right? The highest single digit. It represents a peak, a climax.
Like reaching the top of the mountain.
Exactly. But in this philosophy, once you reach the absolute peak, the only direction left to go is down.
I see.
It represents the end of a cycle. And 9 times 9 is 81. So it isn't just a 9, it's a compounded 9.
Like a super 9.
Yeah, a hidden climax representing an incredibly precarious transitional threshold.
Yeah.
It is a moment where a person's life force is considered exceptionally vulnerable to cosmic disruption. Or, well, ending.
So she isn't just planning a birthday party.
No, not at all.
She is actively trying to buy an insurance policy against her own mortality and the family's collapse.
Yes.
And she does this by commissioning a staggering, industrial scale production of religious texts.
The sheer volume is insane.
She orders exactly 3,651 copies of the Diamond Sutra to be transcribed.
Which, in an era long before printing presses were used for customized spiritual devotions, the logistics of that order are just mind-boggling.
Think about the ink. The physical hours of labor required to transcribe thousands of philosophical texts by hand.
Which is precisely why this initial bulk order is outsourced. The text notes that this labor is given to outside people.
Oh, like a gig economy.
It is the exact spiritual equivalent of utilizing a gig economy. They are bringing in external, hired contractors to generate a massive volume of baseline spiritual capital.
So the Diamond Sutra is what they're copying.
Right. It's a foundational text in Mahayana Buddhism, emphasizing the illusion of the material world. But for Jia Mother right now, it is essentially a volume play.
It's quantitative devotion.
Exactly.
But the text immediately draws this sharp, fascinating line between that bulk outsourcing and the real spiritual flex.
Because she doesn't just want 3,000 plus Diamond Sutras.
Right. She also demands exactly 365 copies of the Heart Sutra.
Yes.
And these cannot be outsourced to hired scribes. These must be handwritten entirely in-house by the female relatives of the family.
This is where the underlying logic of the karma economy becomes incredibly sophisticated. The text explicitly employs an analogy here to explain the difference.
What's the analogy?
It compares the sutras to a Taoist talisman. Now, traditional talisman is often a piece of paper inscribed with specific characters or symbols by a practitioner.
Like a spell or a ward.
Right. But the paper and the ink alone are powerless. They are just the shell.
Okay.
What makes the talisman active, what gives it its protective or exercising power, is the core or the soul, the fudan, which is the vital spiritual energy channeled into it during its creation.
Oh, I see. So the thousands of outsourced diamond sutras are just the shell. They're the necessary infrastructure.
Yep, the bulk material.
But those 365 heart sutras are the fudan. They are the engine that actually makes the magic work.
Exactly.
But why must they be written specifically by the women of the family? Why can't the highly educated male scholars of the household write them? I mean, they probably have better handwriting anyway.
That's a great question. It's because the deity they are honoring to secure this protection is Guanyin.
The goddess of mercy.
Right, a female bodhisattva.
Yeah.
The matriarch's logic dictates that because the deity is female, the devotion must come from the pure inner chambers of the estate.
Oh, so it's about ritual purity.
Precisely. The inner family wives and young ladies represent a protected, uncorrupted demographic within the social hierarchy. Their labor isn't tainted by the gritty transactional reality of the outside world.
The men are out there doing politics and making dirty money.
Exactly. To Jia Mother, female purity, specifically aristocratic female purity, is a higher grade, far more potent spiritual currency than whatever the external male contractors could possibly produce.
It is a phenomenal display of internal power. Jia Mother has absolutely no formal political standing in the imperial court.
None at all.
She can't command armies or dictate tax policy. But within the walls of this sprawling estate, she acts as the central bank of karma.
I love that phrase, central bank of karma. That's exactly what she is.
She commands the spiritual destiny of the entire bloodline. And she is casually directing her daughters, granddaughters, and nieces to sit down and mint this currency for her.
And it creates a fascinating division of labor within the house.
Yeah.
You look at Shichun, one of the younger ladies of the household.
Right.
She hears about this assignment and eagerly volunteers. She proudly declares that she is the most devout when it comes to copying sutras.
For her, it's an honor.
Yeah, a quiet, meditative retreat from the anxieties of the house. But then you look at Wang Shifeng, the second grandmother, and the primary operational manager of the estate.
The ultimate boss of the daily grind.
Exactly. And Shifeng is granted a total, unquestioned exemption from this holy homework.
Really? She doesn't have to write a single one.
Not one. The text is very pragmatic about why she is simply too busy running the actual physical machinery of the household to sit at a desk grinding ink all day.
Which makes sense. Someone has to keep the lights on.
Exactly. Furthermore, it casually mentions she lacks the refined calligraphy skills to execute the task properly anyway.
Which highlights a vital dichotomy that underpins everything we will discuss today, I think.
Oh, definitely.
You have the idealized, incense-scented, theoretical version of the family, represented by Shichun, meticulously copying sutras in quiet devotion.
The aesthetic ideal.
Right. And then you have the messy, chaotic, often ruthless reality of keeping the estate financially solvent and operationally functional.
Which is entirely Jifeng's domain. Spiritual labor, in this context, is revealed to be a luxury.
Wow, yeah, it really is.
It's reserved for those who are completely insulated from the administrative burden of survival.
But the most revealing moment of this entire spiritual campaign doesn't come from the wealthy ladies writing the texts. It comes from a servant.
Yang,
Yes, Yonyang. She is Jia Mother's chief maid, her most trusted attendant.
basically her right hand.
She arrives at Shichun's quarters to deliver the specialized paper and the high-grade Tibetan incense for the project. And while she's standing there, she casually drops a detail that is genuinely astonishing.
It's so wild.
She reveals that for over 3 years, every single time she has served Jia Mother her meals, she has been secretly skimming and saving the rice offered to Buddha from the matriarch's table.
Literally hoarding individual grains of rice.
Yes. She explains that she has been hoarding this blessed rice specifically to use as a foundational offering when the matriarch finally performs a grand ceremony.
She frames it as a token of her own sincere heart.
And Shichun is so deeply moved by this display of long-term piety that she jokingly refers to Yuanyang as a dragon girl.
Which elevates this servant to the mythological status of an acolyte to Guanyin herself.
But, I mean, I have to challenge this framing, though. Let's look at the environment Yuanyang operates in.
Okay, let's look at it.
She is navigating a household with hundreds of servants, all of whom are fiercely competing for favor, resources, and security.
It's a Shark Tank.
Right. So is hoarding the boss's rice for 3 years an act of genuine, unadulterated religious devotion? Or is this a shrewd, highly calculated political maneuver?
You think it's just a performance review strategy?
It feels like the ultimate long-game performance review strategy. She is ensuring that when the matriarch's most spiritually sensitive moment arrives, she has physical proof of her unwavering multi-year loyalty.
That skepticism is entirely warranted, and it actually cuts to the core of how survival functions in a rigid vertical hierarchy.
Right.
The brilliance of the text is that it refuses to give you a clean answer. It's that murky diagnostic landscape you mentioned at the beginning.
Ah, right.
In a system where a servant's livelihood, physical safety, and social standing are entirely dependent on the whim of the matriarch, the line between genuine devotion and calculated self-preservation completely dissolves.
They become the exact same thing.
Exactly. Yuan Yang's influence stems from being indispensable. By aligning herself so completely with Jia Mother's spiritual anxieties, she guarantees her place in the innermost circle.
She is essentially investing in the matriarch's spiritual portfolio, ensuring her own dividends in the process.
That's a great way to put it.
It is a stunning picture of absolute loyalty and controlled order at the very top of the hierarchy. We have pristine paper, Tibetan incense, and servants thinking 3 years ahead to prove their devotion.
But keep that image of pristine control in your mind. Because Jia Mother isn't just looking toward the next life or trying to appease cosmic forces.
She's worried about the here and now.
She is deeply, actively terrified of what is happening to the family in this life. Her spiritual hoarding is a symptom of her anxiety over the estate's impending decline.
And that anxiety manifests violently in how she attempts to control the next generation of the family.
Which brings us directly into the psychological pressure cooker. We move from Zichen's quiet study directly into Jia Mother's quarters.
Right, she's having trouble sleeping.
She is suffering from insomnia, unable to rest, just consumed by the underlying dread of the family's trajectory. Her grandson, Bayu, comes to visit her, bringing a very specific gift, katydids, housed in intricately carved bamboo cages.
The idea being that the chirping will help her sleep.
Right. His intention is that the rhythmic chirping of the insects will soothe her to sleep. Yeah. It is a gesture of affection.
But the symbolism is incredibly potent.
Oh, completely.
These are small, energetic creatures trapped inside beautiful, rigid structures, expected to perform an aesthetic function for the amusement of their masters.
It is an exact mirror of the youth in this household.
Wow, yeah. And Jia Mother's reaction to this gift proves the point immediately.
She takes one look at the bamboo cages and completely dismisses the affection. Instead, she roasts him.
She just tears into him.
She accuses him of slacking off, of indulging in frivolous play with bugs, simply because his strict father happens to be out of town.
So the aesthetic charm of the gift is entirely eclipsed by her demand for productive, scholarly behavior.
Right. Now, Baoyu possesses a high degree of emotional intelligence. He instantly recognizes that the atmosphere is hostile, so he employs a classic deflection tactic.
The classic throw someone else under the bus maneuver.
Exactly. He pivots the conversation away from his own leisure activities and redirects the matriarch's attention to his younger relatives, Jia Huan and Jia Lan.
Right.
He mentions that he was actually busy helping them with a poetry couplet assigned by their tutor.
He frames it as being helpful, but he is essentially tossing his younger relatives directly into the line of fire.
Completely.
He says, I wasn't just playing, I was trying to help Juan because he couldn't figure out the assignment.
And Jia Mother zeroes in on that failure with terrifying precision. What follows is a public, systemic dismantling of a child.
She doesn't just scold Jia Huan, she eviscerates his character in front of a room full of people.
It's so harsh.
She dismisses him as entirely useless. She openly accuses him of bribing other people to complete his homework rather than studying.
She describes his demeanor as sneaky, comparing him to a little ghost skulking around the estate.
And then she concludes her tirade by wondering aloud what kind of miserable creature he will turn out to be when he grows up.
And the text chillingly notes that her insults make the entire room burst into laughter.
That detail is so disturbing. The head of the family is openly humiliating a child, reducing him to a punchline, while completely ignoring the underlying reasons why he might be struggling or acting out.
It's incredibly destructive.
Why is she targeting him with such venom over a poetry assignment? It seems like an overreaction.
To understand the venom, you have to understand the rigid caste system operating inside the family. Jia Huan is not a primary legitimate heir. He is the son of a concubine.
Oh, okay.
In this aristocratic structure, his existence is secondary. He does not possess the inherent social capital, the maternal protection, or the presumed future authority that Baoyu enjoys.
So the playing field isn't just uneven, it's completely tiered.
Exactly. When Juan resorts to bribing people for his homework or sneaking around the corridors, he isn't simply being a lazy child. He is employing the desperate survival tactics of the disenfranchised.
He's hustling because he has to.
Right. He knows he cannot win the legitimate scholarly way because the system is already biased against him. So he hustles. He operates in the shadows.
So Gia Mother's visceral disgust isn't really about a poorly written couplet.
No, it's a reaction to his lack of aristocratic refinement. She is punishing him for exhibiting the very survival traits his marginalized status forces him to adopt.
That completely recontextualizes the scene. It is the brutal enforcement of a hierarchy. But the whiplash in this room is severe because the conversation then shifts to the other child, Gia Lan.
Right, the nephew.
Bayou mentions that little Lan actually completed the poetry assignment successfully, entirely on his own.
And upon hearing this, Gia Mother's demeanor undergoes a violent shift. The anger dissolves instantly into overwhelming, tearful emotions.
Just starts weeping.
She looks at Gia Lan and immediately begins projecting the entire crushing weight of the family's survival onto him.
A literal child.
Right. She weeps, recalling Lan's deceased father, her eldest grandson, Jiazu, who was a brilliant and promising scholar before his premature death.
So she's projecting the dead father onto the living son.
Exactly. Through her tears, she expresses her fervent hope that young Lan will grow up to prop up the family doors.
Prop up the family doors. The learner. Think about the sheer gravity of that phrase.
It's immense.
The estate is crumbling, the finances are precarious, the adults are failing, and she is looking at a child who just managed to string together a decent poem and deciding he is the load-bearing pillar of the dynasty's future.
It is a terrifying burden for a kid.
And the reaction of Lan's mother, Li Wan, is what truly anchors the dread of this scene.
Li Wan is one of the most complex figures in the household. As a young widow, her structural power is virtually non-existent, except through the potential future success of her son.
Right.
When Gia Mother begins to weep and place this monumental expectation on Lan, Li Wan also breaks down in tears. But her reaction is not merely sympathetic grief. It is a highly calculated defensive maneuver.
She immediately steps in to intercept the praise. She begs Bayou, please do not praise him too much. He is just a child. If you constantly praise him, he might develop an big and heart-fat complex, an inflated ego, and that will destroy any chance he actually has of succeeding.
Which is such a specific, intense reaction.
Right. Why does she do this? Why not let her son enjoy a rare moment of validation from the supreme leader of the house?
Because Li Wan understands the deadly physics of the environment they inhabit. She is delivering a shrewd clinic on survival in a toxic bureaucracy.
So.
She knows that in a snake pit of a household, where resources are scarce and rivalries are fierce, standing out even for something positive places a massive target on your back.
The tall poppy gets cut down.
Exactly. It invites intense jealousy. It invites quiet sabotage from other factions, like Gia Wan's mother, who are desperate to secure their own piece of the estate.
So by publicly, aggressively downplaying her own son's achievements, she's actively trying to shield him from the destructive glare of a family's attention.
Yeah, she is trying to keep him under the radar.
That's heartbreaking.
Precisely. Her tears are a heartbreaking mixture of genuine mourning for her deceased husband and absolute paralyzing terror for her son's future.
She knows being the golden child is dangerous.
She knows that being the golden child in this family is death sentence, whether metaphorically or literally. The pressure will either crush him or the jealousy of others will tear him down.
Does Gia Mother listen to her?
She does. Gia Mother eventually concedes the point, agreeing that they shouldn't push the boy too hard, lest they frighten him into illness. But the atmosphere of unbearable tension has been firmly established.
Generational trauma is being passed down in real time, disguised as grandmotherly encouragement.
Yeah, it's rough.
Up in these pristine, incense-filled rooms, they are trying to dictate the future through calligraphy and poetry. But the G estate is fundamentally an enormous economic engine.
It is a massive corporation.
And while the masters are weeping over couplets, the actual foundation of their wealth is literally being punched out in the courtyard.
The transition from the emotional manipulation of the inner chambers to the physical violence of the outer courtyards is jarring, but it's deeply necessary.
We have to see where the money comes from.
Exactly. We move to the East Mansion, the operational hub managed by a man named Zhen. He's currently in the process of receiving the seasonal agricultural rents and fresh game from the estate's sprawling rural holdings.
And the learner, picture the sheer volume of goods here. We aren't talking about a basket of apples.
No, not at all.
We are talking about wagons of grain, exotic wild game, massive shipments of produce that feed and fund hundreds of people.
It's immense wealth.
The estate manager, Zhu Rui, brings the inventory ledgers to Zhen. And this is the moment where the entire illusion of elite control just collapses.
It happens so fast.
Zhu Rui hands over the detailed list of incoming assets. Zhen, the man ultimately responsible for the solvency of this branch of the family, takes the list and asks, "Have you verified the numbers on these freshly delivered goods?"
And Zerui replies, yes.
And Zhen's response seals the fate of his leadership. He says, "Excellent. I don't have time to count this myself. I will just keep a copy of the ledger for the records. You handle the distribution."
He completely willingly abdicates his responsibility to verify the physical assets of his own estate.
It is the equivalent of a ship's captain staring at a beautifully drawn map in his dry cabin, completely ignoring the fact that his crew is currently bludgeoning each other with oars down in the flooded boiler room.
That's exactly it.
He assumes that possessing the spreadsheet is the exact same thing as controlling the reality of the warehouse.
Saying, I don't have time to count this. This is the epitaph of the Jia family's wealth. Because when the central authority refuses to check the math, the middle managers instantly realize that they, not the masters, hold the actual power.
Right. The managers are the ones holding the actual goods.
Exactly. And a servant named Bauer immediately senses this vacuum and tries to exploit it. He approaches Jia Zhen and begins to complain, essentially whining that he has been sidelined and cut out of the lucrative operational decisions.
He is deliberately stirring the pot, probing to see who is actually in charge.
Yep.
And Zhu Rui, the manager who just handed over the unverified ledger, gets intensely defensive. He delivers a flex of power that is absolutely staggering.
It's an incredible moment.
He turns around and announces, "I manage the land rents and the rural estates. I handle 300 to 500,000 taels of silver a year coming in and going out. The masters have never questioned me over that kind of money, so why are you questioning me over a few pieces of fruit?"
We need to pause and quantify what Zhu Rui is actually saying here. 300 to 500,000 taels of silver is not a standard salary.
It's an astronomical sum of money.
In the historical context of the Qing dynasty, this is the equivalent of a regional government's budget, or the funding required to supply a massive standing army.
Wow.
By throwing that number out, Zhu Rui is subtly but forcefully reminding everyone in the room, including Jia Zhen, that he is the engine. He controls the lifeblood of the family. He is declaring himself too big to fail.
And Jiazen's reaction is pathetic. He doesn't want to mediate the conflict. He doesn't want to assert dominance. He just wants the headache to go away so he can go back to his leisure. He barks at Bauer to get lost and kicks him out of the room. He thinks he has solved the problem by removing it from his immediate line of sight.
Which is the most disastrous management decision possible. Because Bauer doesn't simply evaporate.
Right.
He walks out into the courtyard, the resentment boils over, and a massive physical brawl erupts.
A literal fistfight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bauer gets into a vicious fistfight with a man named He San. Now, who is He San? He is a known drunk, a chronic troublemaker, and most importantly, he is Zhu Rui's godson.
So this isn't just a random dispute over a spilled drink.
No, not at all.
This is a violent proxy war between competing factions of the servant class spilling out onto the paving stones right outside the manager's office. The people who actually control the wealth are fighting over the scraps, while the master sits inside holding a piece of paper he hasn't even read.
The physical violence is the undeniable symptom of a complete systemic collapse of authority. Jia Zhen hears the commotion, discovers the brawl, and his reaction is purely punitive.
He goes straight to physical punishment.
Right. He, along with another manager, Jia Lian, drag the men in and order 50 lashes for both Bauer and He San, followed by immediate expulsion from the estate.
50 lashes is brutal.
It is. They attempt to apply raw, brute force to reestablish the order they lost through negligence.
But the violence utterly fails to restore respect. Sure, the whips inflict physical agony and the men are removed, but the psychological grip of leadership is gone.
Completely gone.
Because the moment the beatings end, the text plunges us into the whispers of the lower-tier servants who watch the whole thing happen. They aren't cowering in fear, they are sneering in contempt.
The gossip is devastating. The servants analyze Jia Zhen's leadership and dismantle it entirely. They explicitly reference a past highly destructive scandal involving the U.S. sisters.
Who were they?
This references a widely known history where Jia Zhen engaged in illicit, deeply immoral sexual affairs. And the crucial detail is that he allegedly utilized this very servant, Baor, to help facilitate those affairs and cover his tracks.
Oh, the irony is thick. The boss cannot effectively discipline the employee because the employee knows exactly where all the bodies are buried.
Exactly.
Zhen surrendered his moral high ground the moment he compromised himself.
It is a profound lesson in the mechanics of power. In a deeply hierarchical system, authority is not merely derived from a title or the legal right to inflict 50 lashes.
Right.
True, sustainable power requires moral authority and consistency. Because Zhen behaved corruptly in his private life, he immolated his professional authority.
He gave it all away.
The servants view him as a hypocrite. He can whip them until their backs bleed, but he can no longer command their loyalty or regulate their behavior. When leadership loses its moral center and delegates its oversight blindly, the middle management layer will cannibalize the organization from the inside out.
The contrast is breathtaking. Upstairs, the matriarch is hoarding grains of rice to buy favor from the cosmos. Downstairs, the managers are stealing rivers of silver and punching each other in the face.
It's an environment of profound internal rot.
And when the wealth inside the walls is being mismanaged and squandered, the ambitious relatives on the fringes of the family realize they cannot rely on the estate to survive.
No, they have to look elsewhere.
They are forced to look outward, to the government, to hustle for their livelihood.
Which brings us to Jia Yin. He is a poorer, lower-status nephew of the family. He doesn't have the inherited luxury of Bao Yu, nor does he draw a management salary like Jia Lian.
He's hungry.
He is hungry, he is sharp, and he's ambitious. He catches wind that one of the senior masters, Jia Zhang, has been appointed to oversee an enormous external government project, the construction of a new imperial tomb.
An imperial tomb project is a massive influx of state capital. It means lucrative government contracts, endless procurement budgets, and boundless opportunity for anyone who can secure a piece of the action.
A gold mine.
Jia Yun wants to be a contractor on this project. He wants to supply the materials or manage the labor, but he knows his distant family title isn't enough to secure a meeting with the men in charge.
No, he needs an in.
He needs an inside operator. He needs Wang Shifeng to whisper his name into the right ears.
To execute this, Jia Yun initiates a high-stakes, classic bureaucratic maneuver. The preemptive bribe.
A bribe.
Yep. He scrounges his limited funds and purchases highly expensive, fashionable embroidered goods. This is a significant financial risk. He is investing his own scarce capital to buy a moment of Xifeng's time.
He arrives at Shifeng's quarters with the goods, but the timing is tense. When he walks in, Shifeng is in the middle of complaining about the very breakdown in discipline we just witnessed in the courtyard.
She is acutely aware that the family's control over its staff is slipping.
She even invokes the memory of an infamous past incident referencing a servant named Jiao Da.
Right, Jiao Da.
Jiao Da was an old retainer who got blackout drunk and stood in the courtyard screaming obscenities, exposing the family's darkest, most shameful secrets to everyone within earshot.
It was a huge scandal.
Shifeng brings this up to make a point. She says, if we do not enforce discipline now, while the family still has wealth and influence, what will happen when the younger, weaker generation inherits this mess? They won't be able to control these people at all.
She is the only person in the entire novel who seems clear-eyed about the trajectory of the dynasty. She sees the iceberg, even if she can't steer the ship away from it.
She gets it.
And it is in this mood of pragmatic, irritated foresight that she receives Jia Yun. He comes in, bows deeply, and attempts to smoothly present these expensive embroidered goods under the polite guise of just showing some respect for the upcoming holidays.
Shifeng's response is a masterstroke of directness. She doesn't blink, and she doesn't feign polite ignorance.
No, she cuts right through it.
She looks at the gifts, looks at him, and says, "You do not have the money to waste on frivolous things like this, and I certainly do not lack for anything. If you want me to accept these, you must tell me exactly what it is you want. No hiding the bone in the meat."
No hiding the bone in the meat.
I love the visceral quality of that phrase. Stop wrapping your agenda in polite fluff. Show me the skeletal structure of the deal.
It forces Yun to abandon his carefully rehearsed script. He admits, plainly, that he wants a lucrative contracting job on the Imperial Tomb project.
And what follows is an incredibly revealing explanation from Shifeng about the hard limits of aristocratic power.
It's a masterclass.
She rejects the bribe, but she takes the time to explain exactly why she is rejecting it, delivering a devastatingly realistic lecture on how imperial bureaucracy actually functions versus how people think it functions.
She tells him, look, if this were an internal family matter, If you wanted to manage a farm or run a kitchen within the estate, I could make the decision right now. But this is a government project.
It's out of her jurisdiction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She then maps out the administrative reality. She explains that the high-level decisions, the ceremonial approvals, are made by the top court officials, the Tenguan Sion.
Okay.
But the actual day-to-day execution, the processing of contracts, the flow of money, is entirely controlled by the entrenched lower-level clerks and runners, the Shuanyai.
This distinction is crucial to understanding why empires fail. The high officials, the aristocrats like the Jia family, hold the titles, but they frequently rotate positions or they are too detached from the labor to understand it.
Right.
The lower-level clerks, however, are career bureaucrats. They survive administration changes, they hold the institutional memory, they control the paperwork, and therefore they hold the real leverage.
And they're the ones actually doing the work.
Shifeng is explicitly telling Hyun that her aristocratic family title means absolutely nothing to a gritty government clerk whose job is to process lumber orders. The family is there to serve the master, the emperor, not to dictate terms to his bureaucracy.
She realizes that her jurisdiction ends at the front gate of the estate. Taking the drive would be a terrible transaction. It would create an obligation she cannot fulfill, yielding a negative return on investment.
It's an incredible display of self-awareness. People often categorize Yifeng as endlessly greedy, but here she is, refusing a literal box of treasure because she's too intelligent to make a promise she cannot deliver on.
And right in the middle of this tense, high-stakes negotiation, the text injects a moment of physical comedy that completely shatters Yun's composure.
Oh my gosh, the toddler.
Yes. Just as he is desperately trying to salvage his pitch, Shifeng's toddler daughter, Qiaoji, comes toddling into the room.
She is described as being dressed up like a cluster of bright flowers, clutching toys, surrounded by wet nurses. Yun sees an opening.
He thinks he can charm the mom by charming the kid.
Right. He decides to play the charming, friendly uncle routine to win points with the mother. He puts on a big smile, leans down, and tries to engage the child. He says, "Oh, she is so beautiful, she's going to have such a great future."
And the toddler takes one look at his face and absolutely loses her mind.
She just starts screaming and wailing in terror.
It entirely derails the negotiation. The tension in the room spikes. Yun is sweating, trying to backpedal. The baby is screaming louder, the nurses are scrambling, and the bribe has officially failed.
It's a disaster for him.
He has no choice but to accept defeat, pack up his embroidered goods, and retreat.
Shifeng softens the blow slightly, adopting a paternalistic tone. She tells him, "Take the gifts back. You are not an outsider. If an opportunity arises internally within our own walls, I will send for you."
But the rejection is definitive.
Yin walks out into the corridor feeling deeply humiliated. He thinks to himself, people always say the second grandmother is fierce, and she truly is. There is not a single crack to slip through. No wonder she has no male heir.
That internal thought is a deeply spiteful, culturally loaded curse. In this society, failing to produce a male heir is considered the ultimate failure for a woman of her status.
He goes straight for the jugular.
Yun's frustration boils over into a silent, venomous attack on her deepest vulnerability.
But the machinery of the estate isn't entirely cold and transactional, because as Yun is leaving, smarting from this rejection, he has a brief interaction that reminds us of the human pulse beating underneath all this bureaucracy.
Right, he runs into Shifeng's maid, Xiaohong.
Yes. Throughout the entire stressful meeting with Shifeng, there has been a secret, unspoken subtext playing out in the background between Yun and Xiaohong.
They share lingering glances.
The text references a previous encounter where they secretly swapped a handkerchief, a classic, highly charged trope of forbidden romance in this literature.
Yun, acting on impulse, takes the expensive embroidered goods, the failed bribe that just caused him so much humiliation, and secretly tries to pass some of them to Xiaohong.
Like, here, you take this.
Right. She initially refuses, terrified of the consequences of being caught accepting gifts from a male relative. But he insists, pressing them into her hands, and she finally blushes, relents, and accepts them.
It is a profoundly tender, quiet moment of connection amidst the cutthroat environment of the estate.
It really is.
While the matriarchs are obsessing over karma, and the managers are fighting over silver, and Shifeng is navigating the rigid walls of government bureaucracy, these two young people are just trying to find a sliver of warmth and humanity in the margins.
It illustrates that despite the systemic decay, the household is still populated by hormonal, emotionally complex human beings.
It is a beautiful moment of light. But the light does not last. because the sun sets on the estate, and when the darkness falls, the pragmatic reality of the day gives way to the unbearable psychological toll of the night.
Which brings us to our final exploration, the ghosts, the guilt, and the omens of decline.
Shi Feng appeared completely rational, entirely in control of her world during her meeting with Yoon. She understood the system flawlessly.
But logic cannot protect you from the physical manifestation of immense stress.
The transition from the bureaucratic to the supernatural is sudden and deeply unsettling. Pinger, Shi Feng's most trusted confidant, enters the room to report a bizarre and terrifying story.
Right, a messenger has arrived from the Shuyu nunnery.
A religious institution financially and politically affiliated with the Jia family. The head nun is requesting an emergency advance on her monthly allowance, along with some pickled vegetables, because she has fallen gravely ill.
And the explanation for her illness is straight out of a horror narrative.
It's terrifying. Pinger relays the events. The nun claims that a few nights prior, she was intensely irritated because the young acolytes, the little girls, indentured to work at the nunnery, kept falling asleep from exhaustion without blowing out the lamps.
Right, they were just too tired.
The head nun angrily got out of bed in the middle of the night to extinguish the lights herself. But when she returned to her own bed, she found two figures sitting on it, a man and a woman.
She demanded to know who they were, but instead of answering, the figures lunged at her.
They threw a rope around her neck and began to violently strangle her.
She managed to scream, waking the other nuns who rushed in with lanterns, only to find the attackers gone, and the head nun collapsed on the floor, foaming at the mouth, barely clinging to life.
Now, the learner, we have to examine the nature of this story. Is this intended to be read as a literal haunting, a jump scare in the dark?
Or is it something far more insidious?
To me, it feels like the nunnery is not haunted by actual demons. It is haunted by the collective trauma and the repressed guilt of the entire system. These young girls are overworked, exhausted, passing out with the lights on.
Right.
The nun is managing them harshly, acting as the enforcer of the estate's will, and then she is violently attacked by phantom figures.
Your interpretation aligns perfectly with the thematic weight of the novel. In this literary tradition, ghosts are rarely just supernatural anomalies.
They mean something more.
They are the symbolic physical manifestations of systemic rot and unaddressed injustice. The phantoms in the nunnery strangling the figure of authority can be read as the embodiment of repressed anger, the unpaid labor, and the hollowing out of the Jia family's spiritual center.
Wow.
The religious institutions, which should be sanctuaries of purity, like the Heart Sutras we discussed at the very beginning, have devolved into sites of terror, exploitation, and exhaustion.
And the terror does not remain confined to the nunnery. It bleeds directly into the main corridors of the family estate.
Literally moments after Pinger finishes recounting this horrifying story, a young servant boy comes sprinting into the courtyard, absolutely panicked, panting for breath.
What does he say?
He claims that he went to the back quarters to add coal to the fire, and while passing a block of 3 empty, unused rooms, he heard a distinct, heavy breathing, a rhythmic exhaling in the absolute dark.
The spatial imagery here is critical. The empty rooms.
Yes, the physical decay of the house.
These vast, drafty, unoccupied spaces that were once full of life and wealth, they directly mirror the financial and moral hollowing out of the family. The estate is shrinking internally. And as it shrinks, it leaves behind these dark, void spaces where paranoia and dread can take root and flourish.
Shi Feng's reaction is immediate, aggressive, and entirely characteristic. She curses the boy out. She yells, "Nonsense! I do not allow talk of gods and ghosts in this house. I have never believed in such things. Get out!"
She tries to banish it with words.
She uses the sheer force of her personality and her authority to banish the fear, exactly the same way Jia Zhen tried to use the whip to banish the insubordination in the courtyard.
It's the exact same tactic.
She relies entirely on her conscious, rational mind to dictate reality.
But the conscious mind is a fragile dam against the weight of systemic collapse. The text notes that they review some accounts, chat casually to dispel the tension, and finally retire to sleep around the second watch of the night.
But as they approach the third watch, roughly 3:00 a.m., the deepest, quietest part of the night, the classic witching hour, Shi Feng's psychological defenses completely and utterly shatter.
The physical description of this moment is visceral. She is half asleep when suddenly she feels the hairs on her entire body stand straight up. A freezing cold sweat breaks out across her skin.
She is seized by an inexplicable, paralyzing terror that she cannot rationalize away.
She is so profoundly frightened that she wakes up Peer and another concubine, Qitong, and forces them to sit up and stay awake with her.
This brilliant, ruthless, pragmatic manager literally cannot bear to be alone in the dark.
This is the physiological manifestation of her immense, unsustainable burden. Yufeng is the load-bearing pillar of a deeply dysfunctional structure.
She holds it all together during the day.
During the day, she can fight the battles. She knows the finances are crumbling, she knows the servants are rebelling, she knows the external political situation is precarious, and she knows they have no leverage.
She can say she doesn't believe in ghosts, but at 3 a.m., her body betrays the lie.
The ghosts she fears are her own repressed anxieties.
Exactly. It is the undeniable subconscious realization that the empire she works so hard to manage is ultimately doomed. She is terrified of the dark because the dark is the only place where her ledgers and her sharp tongue cannot protect her.
It is a profound, devastating psychological breakdown. The three women sit awake, terrified, until they finally hear the roosters crowing in the distance.
Dawn breaks.
The sun comes up. Shifeng is exhausted, her spirit is entirely unsettled, but she forces herself to physically get out of bed, get dressed, and put the armor back on.
She is determined to push through the day and reassert control over her crumbling world.
But the universe is entirely indifferent to her determination, because just as she is trying to gather her shattered composure, the final fatal blow lands.
It is a masterful cliffhanger.
A messenger arrives from Lady Wang, another senior matriarch. The message is terse and terrifying.
What does it say?
It says, there is an urgent official matter outside. The master was just left, and the madam says to quickly send the second master, Jialian, over immediately.
An urgent official matter.
The chapter ends with Shifeng standing there, startled and completely off balance. It is the perfect, chilling conclusion to the trajectory we have tracked.